All right, today we're diving into something really fascinating. How do you actually go about sparking the next generation of female entrepreneurs, especially in those crucial fields of science and tech? We're going to look at a study that put this exact question to the test with a really compelling one-day experiment. So yeah, let's get right into it.
So here's the big question, right? Can you actually make an entrepreneur? There's this common idea that entrepreneurs are just born, not made, that it's some kind of trait you either have or you don't. But what if that's not the whole story? What if it's more of a skill, or maybe even a mindset, that can actually be taught and nurtured? Well, that's the big idea behind the study we're digging into today.
But before we can get to any kind of solution, we really need to wrap our heads around the problem they were trying to solve. And we're talking about a pretty significant gap in the world of STEM and entrepreneurship. And this data from the EU, wow, it lays it out pretty clearly. While almost 17% of working men are self-employed, that number drops to under 10% for women. That's a huge difference. And what's wild is that this gap gets even wider when you look specifically at STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and math.
So why does this even matter? Well, it's not just about fairness. This gap has some very real, very serious economic consequences. When you have fewer female entrepreneurs, especially in tech, it directly slows down a country's ability to innovate. It actually hurts productivity, and it makes the entire economy less competitive on a global scale.
Okay, so with that problem clearly defined, let's get to the really exciting part, the solution they decided to test. We're now moving into the heart of this study, a one-day experiment designed to see if they could actually, move the needle.
Meet the Ozgirls Entrepreneurship Program. The researchers brought together 193 high school girls, all between 14 and 16 years old, from 44 different schools all across Victoria, Australia. And for just one single day, they were completely immersed in the world of tech entrepreneurship.
And listen, this was no boring lecture, not at all. The day was just packed with hands-on activities. They kicked things off with team building. Then they got to hear directly from a female entrepreneur, a real-life role model. But the bulk of the day was spent brainstorming ideas and building actual prototypes. And it all wrapped up with the students pitching their final ideas. Super interactive.
And the goal of all this activity was super specific. The students were challenged to use technology, in this case this little programmable device called a microbit, to invent creative solutions for real social problems that they actually cared about. Things like helping hospitals prioritize patients, or helping people with food allergies travel more safely. It was all about mixing technology with real social impact.
So, the million-dollar question, did it actually work? Can a single day really change a teenager's career path? Let's take a look at the results, because honestly, they are pretty remarkable.
Okay, just look at this. Before the workshop started, the average score for the statement, "I would like to start my own business one day," was 3.37 out of 5. After just one day, that average jumped all the way to 3.77. That shows a really clear, really positive shift in their mindset.
And this wasn't just some little bump. The researchers confirmed that this increase was statistically significant. So what does that mean in plain English? It means the result is highly unlikely to be just a random fluke. In short, the program genuinely worked. But that just leads to the next big question. How? Now this is where the study gets really, really fascinating. I mean, it's one thing to know that the program worked, but it's a whole other thing to understand the mechanics behind that change. Why did this one-day workshop actually succeed?
Okay, so the first key ingredient was what the researchers called inspiration. And this isn't just about feeling good for a moment. They define it as a real change of hearts and minds, an emotional and motivational shift that came from seeing role models, working with mentors, and connecting cool tech to a real-world idea.
The second, and honestly the most critical ingredient, was something they call attitude. This is basically a person's overall feeling about entrepreneurship. Do they see it as an attractive, favorable career path for themselves? You can think of it as their core belief system about what it means to be an entrepreneur. So check this out. The study reveals this incredible pathway. The inspiration and the learning from the workshop, they didn't directly lead to wanting to be an entrepreneur. No, instead, those things first had to change the students' attitude. The absolute key was making them feel that a career as an entrepreneur was attractive and desirable for them. That positive attitude, that was the crucial link in the chain.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. The researchers themselves spell it out perfectly right here in this quote. They found that the most important factor wasn't just teaching business plans or coding skills by themselves. It was all about building an entrepreneurial mindset or attitude. That was the secret sauce. Here's a really simple way to think about it. Imagine attitude as a bridge. All the inspiration from the role models and all the learning from the workshop, that gets you to the bridge. But you don't actually get to the other side, to that real intention to become an entrepreneur, unless you first cross that bridge of having a positive attitude. It's the absolutely essential connection between feeling inspired and actually wanting to take action.
So what can we all take away from this? This is the best part. The study gives us a fantastic blueprint, not just for schools, but really for anyone who wants to inspire that next generation. Let's break down the practical advice.
So based on everything we just saw, we can basically make a checklist for impact. First, focus on creative problem solving and soft skills, not just the technical stuff. Second, you have to foster real human connections with mentors and peers. Third, make sure the projects are tied to real-world problems that students actually care about. Create safe spaces where they feel okay taking creative risks. And above all else, prioritize building that positive entrepreneurial mindset.
And what's so important to remember here is that these lessons aren't just for the classroom, not at all. Whether you're a parent, a mentor, or a community leader, these principles for sparking inspiration and changing attitudes can be used anywhere to empower young people.
And that brings us to our final thought here. Everything we saw today was the result of a single one-day workshop. And it just leaves us with this really powerful question to think about. If one day can spark such a profound change in these young women, just imagine what an entire curriculum built on these principles could achieve.